Scott is a business professor, as I mentioned, at John Carroll University, teaches a number of courses, including a series called The Future of Work, where they travel to and meet with and discuss disruptive technologies, new industries with leading companies and leaders across Northeast Ohio, and I'm sure beyond. So thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to turn it over to Scott shortly, but just wanted to first thank everyone for being on. If there are any questions throughout today's presentation from Scott, please feel free to message it in the chat, which is on the bottom of your screen. I'll help moderate the chats, and Scott, I think perhaps at the end we'll take some questions, which I've also been compiling, and really looking forward to today's conversation and presentation on the landscape of disruptive technology. So Scott, thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. It's good to be with all of you today. And we have a wild kind of hour ahead of us. It's going to go by quickly. We're going to have some pretty cool conversations. And so thank you for taking time out of it's actually a beautiful Thursday here in Northeast Ohio, at least, and kind of exploring with us. And so let's jump in. Let's jump in. I love what Ari and Chris are up to. And so I just wanted to give them a shout out and a thank you. And as you can see here on the screen, this is what they are up to. And I think what they are up to is really, really cool work. So, you have features on your device here. We can actually clap. We can give them a thumbs up. If you'd like to, feel free to do that. But I think Chris and Ari, if you're on the line as well, thank you very, very much for the work that you're doing to help advance this topic, especially in our state. Gosh, probably 4 years ago, I'm sitting in the classroom. I'm with juniors, management majors, and I'm looking out at them. And I had just read a study, had come across something. It suggested that about 47% of jobs were at risk of automation, came out of Oxford, and 47% of jobs risk of automation over the next couple decades. And I thought to myself, wow, that is scary. And I'm looking at these young men and women, and 20 years, they're my age. They're 40. I'm actually 47. They'll probably be 43, 44 years old. They'll have their kids. They'll have their home. And are they on the cutting edge, or are they kind of on the chopping block? And that question really, really stuck with me, and it really kind of set me on this journey to explore this topic. So I'm a leader. I do leader development. Leadership development is what my PhD is in. That's my area of research. That's my area of writing. That's what a lot of my consulting is. But that article fundamentally shifted the trajectory, because I honestly believe there's a bit of a tsunami that's really coming towards us. The waters are rising right now. And if you believe those numbers from the Oxford study, or there's some research out of the White House that would suggest that, jobs under $20 an hour are highly at risk. Bain, 20 to 25 million jobs will be lost. PwC has some numbers around 38% of jobs will be automated. Whether you're in accounting or radiology, or the Fed has some kind of fascinating research. And so I believe that we have an opportunity. And I'm not a technologist. By no means am I a technologist. I've never coded a line. Maybe I did code a line with my Texas Instruments in like 1984 or something like that you hooked up to your TV. I think I coded then. That's the last time I coded. But I have a fascination with this topic. I think it's a fascinating topic. So I'm not approaching this from a technologist. Some of you are technologists. Some of you are doing this work day in, day out, specifically in certain areas. What I'm interested in is the forest. And what I'm interested in is the intersection of leadership and these technologies enabling disruption, because I believe, let's switch from just students for a second here to some of the consulting work that I do. I believe in my work in recent years with organizations, they're not ready either. They are by no means filled with organizations. I think people think of this generation, Gen Y, Gen Z, as digital natives. I literally finished that course that Chris mentioned last night. And you know what? They said they couldn't believe how much they learned, because they aren't immersed in AI or blockchain or 3D printing or additive manufacturing, we should have called it. They aren't immersed in any of that content. So another tsunami kind of coming at us right now is something that we weren't expecting. We have a digital tsunami and we have a biological tsunami, which with the COVID-19. And the world's experts are using technology right now to try and attack that, which is really, really fascinating to watch. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick landscape of what disruption is. We're going to talk about these two things. And again, I think about this from a business standpoint. Everything that we're going to discuss today are multi-billion-dollar industries. And we're going to talk about kind of a digital mindset, something called conceptual blocks that really stall our ability to have a digital mindset. And then we're going to talk about this need, my suggestion that our organizations need what's called tech literacy. I don't necessarily want my organization filled with people who can code, although we need them, yes. But I do want my organization filled with individuals who understand how chatbots could potentially differentiate our work, or drones could create efficiencies, or any number of these other technologies that we're going to explore today could give us a strategic advantage and keep us on the cutting edge versus that chopping block. Because I believe this, not only are my students and myself going to face this issue of whether or not we're on the cutting edge of the chopping block, I also believe organizations in Ohio are going to be facing that as well. And so for all of you leaders on the call today, on the Zoom today, is your organization kind of on the cutting edge of where things are going, or are we vulnerable? And our goal is to avoid that. So love this quote, CEO of Accenture, maybe former at this point. But, you know, I think we've also, at least according to Yang's book, War on the New Normal, we've lost about 5 million manufacturing jobs since 2000 as well, to globalization, automation, et cetera. So these shifts are seismic, and they're going to literally impact most sectors and most industries. Someone right now is trying to disrupt. Some of you are the disruptors, and it's big business. It's huge business. So when we talk about this notion of disruption, at least how I think about it, is you're rendering the previous entity useless. Most of my students right now have never heard of a Motorola Razr or a Nokia. And that's kind of fascinating for me to think about, but they've only been around when there's been an iPhone. 2007, it's probably just kind of been their existence. Maybe they knew BlackBerry, but the iPhone rendered everything that followed somewhat obsolete. And so you look at this list on the screen right here, Netflix with Blockbuster, Zillow, just explore Zillow. A friend of mine is a machine learning individual doing machine learning at Zillow, and they're doing some incredible work trying to automate and digitize that whole process. So these industries that on this list right here, it's pretty apparent. Marriott, extremely vulnerable in some ways, and Airbnb just announced some layoffs in the last couple of days, but maybe a little less vulnerable at this point than Marriott. And to be honest, at least in my household, we don't even, when we travel, we don't even any longer think of staying at a Marriott. We think of going to Airbnb first. So we also have this notion of what's called Moore's Law. Many of you on the line are very, very familiar with that. But as processor speeds increase, so much more is possible. And so as that's been doubling, and as we even move into the world of quantum computing, the pace at which disruption will occur is only going to become more and more exponential. And we've been hearing that word a lot as it relates to COVID-19 in recent weeks. That's also a very, very important concept when it comes to digitization. So I'm going to share with you a video right now. And what I would like you to do, Chris, if you would take that Diamandis clip and put that into the chat. What I would love for you to do is this. Make sure your computer's on mute, copy this link, put it in a browser, open a new tab, and watch this video. Just take a quick look at it. It's Peter Diamandis kind of talking about the 6 Ds of disruption and how he's thinking about how things are moving from analog to digitization. So take 3 or 4 minutes, copy the link, make sure your computer's on mute. Chris, would you give me a thumbs up maybe when the video is complete for you, or send me a chat when the video is done, and we'll pause there. Okay, so I think he shows the image in that video of that gentleman who's standing there with probably $1,000 worth of technology, and now it's literally in our device. Literally at my session today, a friend in San Diego, how you doing, Joel Stern, is watching this session, and it just opens up fun. The learning experience has been digitized. So I'm literally living that day in, day out right now in the classroom, which is absolutely fascinating to observe. And ultimately, I mean, how I'm thinking about this is that our organizations need men and women filled with what I would call a digital mindset. So I'm going to give you a second just to kind of check in with all that text. And if you would, think about your own organization for a moment as you read. So here's the thing. Do we have men and women in our organizations who are looking for and seeing these opportunities of how to use technology to create efficiencies, add customer value, any number of other different dimensions? Do they have a digital mindset, or are they kind of walking around thinking about things as they've always been? And also, do they have a belief system in their own head that they can learn some of this space? Because quite honestly, as an individual who's only been exploring this space for about 3 or 4 years, it's daunting. It's huge. It's incredible. The work that many of you on this Zoom call do, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So as a result, I think a number of people feel a little bit sheepish and concerned. Chris mentioned that I just finished a course on disruptive technologies. It was beautiful. Probably 75% of the people who spoke didn't have degrees in coding, or didn't have degrees in blockchain or virtual and augmented reality. They entered that space later in their career because they had a mindset that this stuff could be learned. But we have this fundamental challenge as human beings, which we're going to talk about next. And there are these cognitive biases. They're called conceptual blocks. And so we have these rules in our head that stall us from having this digital mindset. Those rules might be, well, I'm not a technologist. I'm not tech oriented. I don't know anything about tech. And just that rule there shuts the person down. They're stalled. They're done. So conceptual blocks are rules that we have in our head that limit our ability to think creatively and think in possibilities. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a real life example right now. I'm going to show you a paragraph. I'd love for you to read this paragraph. And when you have the answer, I just want you to go to the chat and don't give the answer, but say, I got it. Okay, so that's all you need to do. Just once you have the answer to this little puzzle, go to the chat and say, I got it. But first, a cartoon. Conceptual blocks. Most of you have finished reading it. One person has it. Two people have it. Okay, everyone's read it. And we have 3 or 4 people now that say they've gotten it. You know, what's interesting is that women can be surgeons. Women can be surgeons. And or this could be a gay couple. That's another potential answer here. If your mind didn't go there right away to that answer, that the surgeon is the mom, that's called a conceptual block. It's a deep-seated unconscious rule. And obviously all of us consciously know that's of course this is simple. Yes, of course a woman can be a surgeon. But it gets to the point of how limited we are at times in our ability to move past some of these subconscious rules that we have in our head. Now, this has real implications for business. So for instance, there was a rule until about 18 years ago that only governments create rockets. People won't buy music. That existed in that Napster area. Apple made billions and billions of dollars. People won't stream music. You don't videotape podcasts. I think Joe Rogan at this point is making half of his revenue off of YouTube. AI cannot do artistic things like create a movie trailer. You can now kind of go to, I forget the name of the resource. It's pretty, I think Ari posted on this the other day, but AI is creating movie trailers. Just Google AI movie trailer. It's a creepy movie trailer that IBM's product Watson created. Human physicians will always identify the best course of care. And at least in some of the studies right now, I've kind of read that, you know what, the AI is actually reading the brain cancer and the breast cancer scans more accurately than the humans. The first automated surgery, oral surgery, occurred in China about 2 years ago. The HIV virus, we have a rule, it can't be used for anything good. Well, actually physicians are using it right now because it's really good at getting into things. So you take out the bad stuff and you use the virus in a different way. Or a rule in our head that $1 billion company would have thousands and thousands of employees. And I think the week Kodak filed for bankruptcy, Instagram with 13 employees was sold to Facebook for about $1 billion. So these rules have major implications for business, for our businesses. Love this quote too from our keyword former CEO of Blockbuster. I think there's one left. I think it's in Bend, Oregon. I was in Bend last summer. I wish I would have seen it. I would have gotten a picture that I could have shared with you right now in front of that. But there's really interesting things going on here around us. And so Airbnb and Lyft just went through some layoffs. Airbnb is probably better positioned right now than Marriott. But before Airbnb, I think it was a rule that if I wanted to create a lodging business, I needed to have a lot of real estate. So the conceptual block was, wow, if I want to create the world's largest people lodging service, I have to invest in real estate. When in actuality, Airbnb created a platform. VRBO created a platform. A Rocket Mortgage really kind of broke through that barrier that getting a mortgage has to take a lot of time. And Rocket Mortgage has fundamentally risen to the top fairly quickly in that industry and done incredible work. Spice, they moved past the conceptual block, and there's a video that we aren't going to watch it on this call right now or on this Zoom right now, but there's a video that we'll put in the chat. And Spice kind of got rid of the conceptual block that we need chefs. You have some MIT students, you know, the chef is sometimes the most challenging part of the business. And, you know, maybe they aren't always the most reliable. Maybe they get sick. Who knows what it is? These gentlemen created an automated system where they partnered with a Michelin star chef, basically said, you know what if we didn't need a chef? The Michelin star chef came up with recipes and they automated the process. Amazon Go. It's another interesting thing. I think in this COVID-19, we're going to come out on the other end of this. For some of you who watch Gary Vee, he's oftentimes talking about voice and the revolution that voice is going to go through. I think that's going to probably be accelerated by some of the COVID-19 disruptions that we've seen. Amazon Go, what if we didn't have to interact with someone when we were checking out? What if we could just walk in the store and grab what we wanted and leave? And so, Chris, if you would, this is the second and last video we're going to watch today. I just want you all to, I want you to watch this video. This is Amazon Go. They now have a larger grocery store that's in play. And if you would, take a look, observe, and I imagine this is the future. The scary thing about this is you watch 8.8 million kind of sales representative service-oriented jobs in the United States. So take a look, Amazon Go. Go to that page, scroll down a little bit, and click play. Okay. So the objective is this. We've got an organization filled with men and women who have a digital mindset. They understand the power and the potential, not always, but the potential in what if we use chatbots for our interviewing, or at least the first round of interviews? What if we used an automated facial recognition system to help us with interviews? All of that is in the works right now. They're thinking in possibilities, and we have an organization filled with men and women who are thinking in possibilities and at least working, struggling, challenging themselves to move past some of these rules, conceptual blocks that we have in our head that limit our ability to think about opportunities. So that's kind of, at least for me, that's kind of step one. There's power there, and there's an openness to learning and to exploring and to questioning. Now, for me, then it's about this notion called tech literacy. And it's a general understanding of the function, benefits, limitations, ethical considerations, and strategic value of various technologies that enable disruption. So an organization filled with people with a digital mindset, they're cognitively on the hunt, and they also know the technologies. Now, again, I don't want someone who knows how to code in Python. I want someone who knows what machine learning is, how it's being applied, what are the considerations, and how could it be a tool for us, or blockchain, or cloud computing, or additive manufacturing, or nanotechnology. All of those different spaces. In my mind, an organization filled with tech literate employees, they're going to see opportunity and they're going to identify some of the right tools, and it'll help them move past those conceptual blocks. So I kind of am done in some ways with my major time with you today. I've kind of just teed up some stuff. What I want you to do now is we're going to go ahead and explore. And we're going to place you in breakout rooms, and I'm going to provide you with a resource. So Chris, if you could post the Google Doc link, if you would. Now, you're going to want to have this Google Doc open before we go to breakout rooms. So please make sure this Google Doc I'm sharing with you, it's daunting. It's way too much for this little bit of time that we have together today. But here's what it does do, is it provides you, and you're going to be able to walk away with this link so you can look at this on your second lunch break or this evening, or you can talk about it upstairs when you have dinner. Who knows, right? But my goal was to go on a little bit of a hunt. What are all the technologies enabling disruption? Each one of these are multi-billion-dollar industries, and they are barreling towards us. Some of them are here. Some of them are actively shifting the landscape. Some of them are being applied in ways you would never imagine. Zillow's using drones to help with some of their real estate appraisals. Fascinating. Or drones in construction. Amazing. So you can literally, regardless of the industry you're in, you can start Googling virtual and augmented reality baseball or whatever it is, and you'll see people working to disrupt. Now, I put technologies in quotes because there's some things here like cybersecurity, Internet of Things, renewable energy, life extension. That's a fascinating space. Quick plug, Lifespan, a book by David Sinclair. It'll blow your mind. He's a guy, Harvard geneticist trying to cure death. But you're going to see some of these, like cybersecurity, you have a convergence, or Internet of Things, there's a convergence of a number of these different technologies. And so I don't know that it's necessarily a technology. We could get into a fun conversation based on your perspectives. But what you're going to do is this. You're going to open up that Google Doc. You're going to feel a little bit overwhelmed like I was. I'm giving you a quick little snapshot on some of these different topics, maybe some headlines of some things that are in the news on each one of these topics. And I just want you and your team in the breakout to have a really cool conversation. We have about a half hour left total. I'd love to give this about 15 minutes, actually about 13 minutes. So let's go ahead, let's go 15 minutes. So go ahead, jump in that room. If you would, put yourself on video so others can see you and get to know you. Kind of peruse these different technologies and get into a conversation and just share with your team some of the headlines or little facts that you read that kind of stood out for you. Don't worry, you're going to have time to digest the totality of the document a little bit later. But this is just us kind of dipping our toes in what a tech literate could mean. Okay? So we're going to go into some breakouts. Chris, on your end, do you have the ability to put people into breakouts? That ability is disabled on my end.
No, not on a webinar, I don't believe.
You don't believe we can do that on a webinar? Okay. How we'll do it is this then. What we'll do is I'd love for you to kind of go ahead and peruse the document for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And then we can have that conversation as a larger group. We can kind of talk about some of the things. And what I would love for you to do is unmute yourself and just maybe highlight some of the things that you read that are kind of standing out for you. Some of you, please go to the end of the document. Some of you go to the middle of the document. Just kind of open it up and take it in. And we'll jump into a little bit of a conversation about what stood out for you. Chris, people said that they don't think they can unmute themselves. So is it possible to let them unmute themselves with our?
Yep, if they can raise their hand or in the panelist side, I can allow them to talk if they want to hop in. So just message, and like I see Jackie, so I'm going to allow Jackie to talk right now.
Okay. Just take about another minute, and then maybe we can get some voices into the space, and they can share what's kind of standing out for them. Not necessarily Q&A just yet, but what are some things that are connections maybe you're making? And I love the fact that Tyler Lance contributed that there's an AI startup doing baseball using VR to help hitters see pitches. Stuff like that is just kind of fascinating that we can share. But what's standing out for you? Just take about another minute or two, kind of bounce around the document, maybe even just read the headlines for now. Sometimes I share the projections of billions of dollars these industries are predicted to command.
I don't know if everyone can hear me, but
Jake, thank you. You are a brave soul, Jake. We've never met, but you have a warm place in my heart. Thank you,
Oh,
sir.
thank
What do you
you.
got?
Yeah, so the first one that kind of just stuck out to me personally is the computer interface section. That's just something that I studied a little bit in school, and it's really fascinating because it is, I think, even for the foreseeable future, like a couple more years at the very least, it's very much still stuck in this research phase because of how the technology is mostly invasive. So you have to like use surgery to get a computer to connect to your brain. But it is something that once these barriers to entry are lowered as research progresses, I think it's going to be really fascinating in how it can connect to all of these other technologies that are blooming at the same time. Because I mean, I think Elon Musk has talked about it a little bit. Like we kind of already have digital selves, and a brain computer interface is going to allow us to access that digital self, like our email, our searches on Google, much faster. And that's kind of like the end goal. But right now there are a lot of projects that are mostly, I'm not sure the right word here, but they're reparative. So BCIs are being used to help patients who have spinal damage or are missing nerves, and they have a prosthetic hand, but it doesn't have a lot of dexterity based on their existing nerves. So a BCI can just improve dexterity. And so there are a lot of problems being solved in a research phase right now. And it's something that's, I think, far away from being like $1 billion commercial industry.
Yeah.
But like that technology is there and it's growing. And I think it's like, it's great to ask the questions now. What are the first things that are going to be possible? Like, let's not think about what the end goal. Like I think neural net or
Neuralink, the Musk company, Neuralink. Yeah. If anyone wants to have their minds blown, just Google Neuralink's latest video. It's pretty fascinating. You're right.
Yeah, and so what I like to think about is like, what are the kind of like smaller wins, things that are subtler problems in this space that could be tackled, with less funding than something like Neuralink.
Yeah, Jake, it's a really interesting space. I mean, it just opens up. The technology used to be connected to the wall, and then now it's not connected to the wall, and then now we're kind of wearing it, and in some cases the technology's in us, whether it's a pacemaker or other health related kind of devices. But yes, what happens when we are literally a part of the technology, and that fundamentally shifts everything in so many different ways. And so, great. Thank you very, very much. Brain computer interface. Yes. If anyone again, Google Neuralink and just explore, you'll go on a little bit of a spiral. Like you said, a lot of it's research, a lot of it's kind of theoretical, but what are the possibilities when that kind of comes to market? It's really interesting. Thank you, sir.
Guess I'll jump in. This is Ari here.
Ari.
Hey, what's going on?
How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So I guess, yeah, talking about disruption, I'll choose, one thing that I've been fascinated by is like chatbots, specifically SMS chatbots.
Yes.
So there's this whole group of communities that are, using conversational marketing to drive conversions, whether it's e-commerce or other areas. There's actually a company in Akron called Drips that's using conversational marketing with AI and SMS to, drive conversion for e-commerce. So that's been something that's super interesting to me that I've been, exploring a lot, especially how like people can build SMS, distribution lists, and how you can leverage, AI and chatbots to sort of increase conversion on different metrics that you're aiming for.
Yeah. And this is another area, thank you, Ari, where you wouldn't think that this has any application to, let's say, education. But there's a TED talk of a professor from, I believe it was Georgia Tech or Georgia State, and he created a chat bot that was a GA. Now, the students never met the GA, but this individual was ranked the best GA by all of the students because this GA got back to them quickly, answered their questions fast, and was there for them whenever they needed them. So not a human, it was a chatbot. So application in so many of these different spaces. It's just about thinking in those possibilities. And I love it, Ari. Thank you, sir. That's awesome. Yep. How about a couple others, you all?
This is Jackie. One thing that strikes me is how much artificial intelligence underlies so many of the other items on this list. It is not like a separate piece. It's really part of them. I mean, chatbots is a great example, right? But really, you know, in Internet of Things, having a smart Internet of Things. So I've always been interested in AI, and I feel like having a solid understanding of AI is kind of necessary to understanding some of these other areas.
I love it. Yes. I mean, AI, deep learning, machine learning, what's the difference? How are they being applied? And for those of you who have not watched AlphaGo, it's a documentary. I think you can probably get it on Netflix or on Amazon Prime. It's a great primer on just one kind of application of what they're doing with AI. I think it's about the game Go, and there's more potential moves in the game Go than there are atoms in the universe, I think was the statistic they shared in the film. More potential moves in the game Go than there are atoms in the universe. And these individuals from DeepMind created, a algorithm that could beat the best human in the world. And so I agree with you. I think the two biggies on this list, at least from what I've been, and I could be wrong, I'd love for people to jump in, but I think nanotechnology is going to fundamentally revolutionize medicine, revolutionize materials science. And then I think also, you get into like self-healing concrete and self-cleaning clothing with nanotech and nanomedicine. But then I agree with you, the AI is kind of a fundamental tool that's underneath a lot of what we're talking about here. That's awesome, Jackie. Thank you.
Yeah, and Scott, this is Mike Walker.
Hey, Mike Walker. Oh, you're here. Mike. Okay, so this is the guy who should be doing this session, you all. So Mike, tell him about you, and then I'd love to hear you comment.
Yeah, so Mike Walker, I've been in the innovation space for quite some time, working for a variety of high-tech companies, but also startups, really focusing on emerging tech and how to create innovation offices, whether it be for research laboratories or be it for traditional companies, large banks, insurance companies, manufacturers, et cetera. And so, probably where Scott, you're flattering me a little bit is with my experience at Gartner, where I was the VP of Tech Innovation and CTO Strategy. And, every year for the past half decade, I was the author of the Emerging Technologies Hype Cycle. Whether you love it or hate it, or you're indifferent. But it was a really great experience because it allowed me to talk to VCs, venture capitalists all around the world to understand what are people willing to invest in when it comes to technology, millions or billions of dollars into specific technologies. I had the opportunity to reach in deep into academia and talk to leading professors on, what they see from a research and development from a long range perspective. So I was able to see the immediate commercial value, and then I was able to see also kind of the long range value. But also, being able to go back to the big evil vendors, and I can say that because I work for one. I'm a bit immune, I guess. At least that's what I tell myself.
He's with Microsoft, everybody, now. Yeah.
And understanding kind of the short range innovation cycles, you've heard, Google and Microsoft and Amazon and others, invest heavily in general purpose quantum computing as an example, and really getting the skinny on what does this really mean? What does that product roadmap actually look like, and how will it apply to customers? And then lastly, it was really cool to be able to go in and see the innovation efforts happening in innovation labs for, with traditional end user organizations. And bringing all that data together and triangulating that information, there were some lessons learned that I think is important for this list here.
Yeah.
Because I had to distill, believe it or not, 4,000 technologies down to 40 technologies.
Wow.
That is not easy. Especially when you're dealing with very opinionated analysts that have passions in certain areas. So here's one key thing that folks have to understand is that, I think someone said it earlier, it's the convergence factor. It's many of these emerging technologies are interrelated, they're dependent on each other. And so looking at one technology in isolation will do you a disservice. I've been focusing a lot on the whole notion of digital ecosystems enabled by blockchain. And, blockchain is one of those technologies where I could go into a customer and say, hey, we've got a blockchain solution, but blockchain is only maybe 5%, maybe 10% of the overall solution. Yeah. It's just the data layer. I still need analytics. I still need a user experience. I still need integration,
5G.
all these aspects, right? So I think one big part is the convergence of these emerging technologies, but also what is driving these technologies. So if you look at the pandemic, what's happening right now is it's forcing mass digitization and remote worker type of motions. It's forcing us to rethink our supply chains and logistics. That's going to light up certain technologies here, but it's also going to put some of these technologies on the back burner, like that one I just talked about around blockchain. Cryptocurrencies, and all that space, we're seeing that start to, cool off, startups go away, etc. Yeah. So the second big thing is to understand the non-technical forces here that are driving these. The third and the last thing, and I'll stop my soapbox ramble here, is these technologies are oftentimes what we see on the list is more kind of marketecture terminology. So for example, if I look at artificial intelligence, that's easy to pick on because you double click on that and, you've got two major disciplines. You've got the area where you have narrow AI, general AI. Once you double click there, you've got 50 to 100 unique styles of artificial intelligence. Yeah. And understanding what AI I put in a chatbot with natural language processing versus if I want to automate a factory with autonomous robots where I'll be using reinforcement learning and other technologies, they are two different types of paradigms that have very, very different requirements and very, very different implications on your business. So it's important also to make sure that we do the double click, triple click, quadruple click, et cetera, on these technologies because it gets complex really, really quick. Yeah. And like you, I'm super excited about what I've referred to in the past as not only biohacking, but DIY biohacking. That's what I really see as the macro trend is you won't need to go to a surgeon to biohack. We actually see today people are injecting themselves with things. They're giving themselves electronics tattoos, etc., augmented reality contact lenses, all sorts of crazy stuff happening right now. So I'm off my ramble. I'll put myself back on mute.
No, I love it, Mike. And for those of you who have not watched, he just mentioned the term biohacking. For those of you who have not watched on Netflix, it's a mini docuseries called Unnatural Selection. It might be one of the, there's an element of biohacking here where you have individuals experimenting with a technology called CRISPR. And it's at once very, very scary and at once very promising. And so unnatural selection is an interesting kind of look into that space. But Mike, I love it. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your expertise this is your expertise. This is what you lived and breathe currently and in your past life with Gartner. So I love it. Thank you so much. We are close on time. So why don't we?
I'll come in here with one. How about one final question, and then any final thoughts you have? But someone in the chat mentioned earlier of these technologies that we've talked about, and we now see on this list in front of us. What can Ohio take a lead in to be a national, worldwide leader in technology and innovation? And then maybe specifically, kind of to piggyback off that a bit. As you're traveling across businesses, Northeast Ohio, maybe there's a few real world examples from some of those conversations and meetings that you and your students have had at Fortune 500 companies and other startups that are in the Ohio ecosystem.
So there's some, I'm going to go with the first one or the last part first. There's some really interesting organizations in Northeast Ohio that are doing some, and that's where I'm most familiar. So for those of you from elsewhere in the state, by all means, jump in. One that really stands out for me is called EventWorks 4D. A few years ago, some of you may have been familiar that there was a hologram of Tupac at Coachella, and I think Snoop Dogg rapped with him. Well, this hologram technology was kind of implemented by this little company here in Midtown Cleveland, and they just finished a project where they had interviewed Holocaust survivors for, I think it was probably about 2 weeks. We had all these cameras, asked them a lot of questions. I think the hologram can answer about 2,000 questions. And the technology there is just fascinating from a historical preservation standpoint. So they're doing some really incredible things. We have a company in town called Technology House. I think a couple folks are on the line from Technology House, and they're doing some wonderful things with carbon and additive manufacturing, partnering with organizations like Vitamix, and I believe it was Adidas, I don't want to speak out of school, or Rydell Helmets, where they're trying to create helmets and 3D print helmets that will reduce concussions for football players. So Current by GE has a technology right now called ShotSpotter, where a community can have these sensors on streetlights, and if there's a gunshot, they can triangulate where that gunshot took place to, I think, within feet. So many incredible things happening here in town. What I'm noticing is that I don't know if some of the larger organizations are really kind of exploring the fringes and the margins. And so, for instance, if you are a large bank, are you exploring some of the fintech conferences, and are you really truly kind of engaged with some of those conversations and aware of what's happening? Or if you're in insurance, same thing, because people are working to disrupt those spaces. And I don't know that sometimes some of the larger players are really in some of those conversations. So I think there's a real opportunity there. I also know for a fact that some of those organizations are not filled with men and women. I think as this list becomes more enmeshed with strategy, like business strategy, if you have men and women who don't understand some of these technologies and have that level of tech literacy, and of course, as Mike mentioned, it can go really deep just even within any of these, but he gave the example of AI. But if they don't have a basic sense, how do you do strategy today? I don't know. I think you're limited. And I think that's a little bit concerning. What can Ohio? You saw Bernie Moreno try and do that with blockchain here in Northeast Ohio. You saw him work to make that an initiative and an effort. And I don't know where that is currently, but I think we have Rick, who's in kind of the corridor near Lordstown, Stockburger, who is doing some work to try and make that a hub of I believe it's battery technology. Am I correct there, Chris?
Yeah, energy innovations.
Yep, energy innovations. Chris, you have a better eye on what's happening in Ohio than I do. I'd love to get your opinion on that. I think, or Ari, I mean, you two are, because you've started this organization, you have a better lay of the land than anyone. Would you take a stab at some of that?
In here that jump out, and I know Mike and I and others have had these conversations, but if we look at what Ohio's good at, you start up in Cleveland in Northeast Ohio with places like the Cleveland Clinic and University Hospitals, and you go down 71 through Columbus down to Cincinnati. Ohio has world-class healthcare, so certainly there's opportunities within healthcare and enabling technologies that can increase patient outcome and bring innovation and increase technologies there. Same with manufacturing, and you have additive manufacturing, 3D printing. In Northeast Ohio, there's a really interesting company, Maker Gear, led by Rick Pollock out of Beechwood. They make 3D printers, and in this coronavirus time, they've taken the printers that they normally build, and they've started creating personal protective equipment for hospital systems. So Northeast Ohio certainly has a ton of manufacturing. The western part of the state has a lot of agriculture. So what are the technologies that can help farmers and pork producers and others continue to grow and expand and put literally food on our tables? And then also there's other things like insurance. There's a ton of insurance companies. Columbus has a number of insurtech startups, everything from Root Insurance, which is a $3.5 billion at the last valuation startup in Columbus, places like Bold Penguin, Beam Dental. There's a handful of them that have existed in insurance, which isn't, those aren't consumer facing in the sense of the Instagrams and Twitters of the world. But those are incredible businesses that we all need. And Ohio has not just the historical institutions like Progressive and Nationwide, but the startups and the tech that are spinning out from people that have worked within those organizations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I love what the two of you are doing, you and Ari, the organization you founded, because I don't know, and I don't know this, I'm literally saying I don't know, who had a pulse on all of this before the two of you started exploring. And I don't know if there's an answer to that. Do you have an answer to that, Chris or Ari?
There's a lot of people doing really good work, but I think with OhioX and conversations like we're having here, it's to bring people to the table to learn from, Northeast Ohio, Central Ohio, Southwestern Ohio, Toledo, Youngstown, et cetera. And we're seeing this now of, in some ways, this work from home world that we're now all in is, I think, accelerating in part some of our vision. And it's not just one or two people. It's an incredible team that has been so helpful. And Scott, you're one of them. From day one of providing feedback and helping bring a perspective that that's really what it's about, is people doing interesting things in technology and innovation from really wide ranges and diverse perspectives and organizations and backgrounds, because and I think that's where I found what you're doing, Scott, with your classes and the future of work and lectures like these so interesting, because you're looking at it from a big picture and how do all these different little things fit into one another. So it's been fun to see so many interesting people and hear folks like Mike Walker chime in from Microsoft, who does incredible work all across the globe, and others, and the Technology House and Jackie and her team there. I've had the opportunity to visit, and there's so many incredible things happening in Ohio that it's exciting to hopefully help connect people and share their stories and collaborate for conversation like we're doing today. Yeah.
Well, and we are close on time. So what I would love for all of you to do is this. I'm going to give you a quick quote. This quote is attributed. Well, here's some resources. So you'll have access to this deck. So I wrote a paper called Cutting Edge of the Chopping Block. And there's an interesting paper from Deloitte, a couple other resources that at least keep me kind of on the forefront of things. And, this is where we've been today and what we focused on as far as our conversation. And then I love this Drucker quote: you cannot predict the future, but you can create it. And so I think that is a mindset, again, that's incredibly valuable. So if each one of you on the line would do this for me, that would be wonderful. Just one word into the chat to kind of help us summarize the day or our conversation today for the last hour. What's one word that comes to mind for you? And I'll read them as we close out for the day. So just one word into the chat and we'll close out. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Informative. Thank you, Stephanie. Opportunity, strategy, challenging, Steve. Thank you. Wonderful. That was from Alex. Thank you, sir. Let's get some others. Inspiring, innovation, invigorating. Wonderful. Some others. Eye-opening. And we will close out with the next one, which is thankful. I'm thankful for all of you being with us today. We appreciate you being here. If you have any questions or comments, that's how you can get in touch with me. Chris and Ari, thank you very much for the opportunity. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Be well. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.